Magic Dowser, show me the well. Here's your look at the new NECA Toys Coraline. This is the articulated figure in yellow Raincoat. Coraline features adjustable arms and legs, a swappable faceplate, and even movable eyes. So let's go ahead and get this review underway. I'm going to take the tape measure, as I normally do, and put it right to the top of Coraline's head. Thank goodness, by the way, I didn't call her Caroline like I started with the other review. Needless to say, the figure, the puppet of Coraline, best way to describe her, stands 8 inches exactly, kind of same height really when we looked at the other Coraline. We'll do some comparisons in a second, don't worry. Switching that over to centimeters, though, you're looking at the figure standing about 20.5. Not too shabby at all. 20.4 to be exact. Of course, what kind of reviewer would I be if I didn't do some comparisons with the other Coraline figure that we had a look at? So we'll just slide her on over. Actually, they are the same height. It just so happens the fact I've got the other Coraline with her legs slightly a little bit more spread, so she comes across a little shorter. If I was to prop the legs up, though, they're about the same. I guess that's not 100% true here. Look, I am being a fibber face about the whole thing. This Coraline, unfortunately, doesn't have... I guess it's not unfortunate, it's not an unfortunate thing, but she doesn't have soles on the underside like this one does have the rubber boots. And as a result of that, she is a little bit taller. So I was fibbing you guys just a little bit. But there's the two Coralines side by side. Not bad at all looking figures. The one thing that's good about this Coraline that sadly this one doesn't possess is that this one actually has peg holes on the undersides of her feet. Chalk it up, I guess, to the fact that that one does just have, I guess, socks on, whereas this one has the boots, so at least they can use plastic for that, and at least can utilize peg holes. So that means, ergo, that you can dismiss this unfortunate thing that really just doesn't hold the figures all that well. Instead, unless, of course, you want to get a little bit more into a dynamic pose, you can take Coraline, and you can take the peg hole that's on the underside of her foot, and you can then attach it to the peg, just like that. Now, granted, even then, that's not 100% stable, but at the very least, if you get the figure balanced just right, as you can see, I'm not utilizing the display stand. Oh, it's going to fall over! No, it's not going to fall over. Let's hope it's not going to fall over. Actually, to be fair, though, the display stand, I've got it widthwise this way. If I turn it around, which I probably should have done right at the get-go, and I take this off, she actually has 2 pegs there. I was unfortunately just relying on one peg, which simply just wasn't strong enough to hold her. But at least this Coraline, you can actually utilize both pegs. And it's simply just a case of attaching her boots back into her foot. Simple, easy peasy, lemon squeezy. Still, I like these figures. The one problem I have with them, and luckily she hopefully doesn't fall over again on me, is these stands. I just find these stands to be a little on the difficult side. For all the intents and purposes, I mean, they are reliable stands in the sense that they are constructed with pegs, and they've got 3 adjustable peg ports that you can then take the supplied neck and just attach it into place. They also give you an extension to that, so you can make the post a lot longer if you wanted to. And they can go between this post hole, and this post hole. The problem with it is kind of like the same thing I was going to say with the DC collectible figures. There's something about that waist clip that just isn't strong, just isn't stable enough to kind of keep Coraline held in place. They really should have used something else. I'm not really sure what, again, it would have been. Maybe, like I had said in this review, a wire frame perhaps, and something more of a stronger clamp. These aren't so much as they are clamps. Let me just go ahead and pick that up right there. Again, it's not so much a clamp. It's not something you pinch open and then you can let go and it closes around the waist of Coraline. Instead, it's actually just a simple peg system. These are just pegged in place and these hinge back and forth. I don't feel like they're strong enough, in all honesty, to kind of hold the character in bay. The fact that she is also a very spindly character doesn't also add to the fact that she doesn't really have the easiest of times standing. Like I said, this one doesn't have so much the hard time because at least you can peg her into the supplied pegs. But the figures themselves are still quite difficult to stand using the type of stands that NECA has included. Keeping the original Coraline that we had a look at, the one that had the orange striped sweater, I wanted to do, of course, comparisons, closer comparisons back and forth. The body makeup, though you probably can't see it underneath the clothing, is the same. One thing that's good about the Raincoat, I'll talk about that in a second, but one thing that is most drastically different between the two is the head portraits. Sure, yes, the hair and the head, for the most part, is exactly the same, but it's the face plates on the front that's something which can be swapped out. And looking at actually the two, it's an idea that I'm actually even contemplating taking the faces and swapping them around. Just because when I picture Coraline here in her raincoat, when she's out in like the dark wooded area, I kind of don't imagine her with this face head sculpt instead of actually going with this one here. So it's simply just a case of taking the head portrait off the faceplate, just like so. Now I'm using my screwdriver again. I mean, you can use really whatever you want, but I just find it's a little easier to kind of get in there. And I've noticed also with this Coraline that I probably didn't notice as much on this one is right where her hair parts, right there. There's a little bit of a gap, and we can just put the screwdriver right in there. Again, you don't necessarily have to use a screwdriver, you could use something else. If you can use your finger, and you have the available means to use a finger that can get in there, by all means, use your finger. But for the sake of this review, I'm actually just going to use the screwdriver. I just find it's a little easier to kind of get in there. So you can, like the other Coraline, just take the face portrait off. There it is right there. It's kind of, I know it's kind of scary looking to look at an open face like this with big googly eyes, but it's just to demonstrate the fact that you can take the face plates off of these. I'm going to go ahead and take the face plate off of this one as well, still utilizing the trusty tool of mine, the screwdriver. And again, just kind of get your screwdriver in there. Something of which, again, I wish NECA Toys could have utilized some simpler means of attaching the faceplate. I just find it's a little difficult to kind of get in there. Probably a lot of it contributes to the fact that it's got such long pegs like this that it's a little harder to kind of pry off and, like I said, change those around. So if you wanted to change this faceplate, let's say from here to here, again, just want to line up the tabs. There's the three quite large tabs sticking out, and you just line those up to the hole and you just pop them back into place. I'm probably going to pop it in just as far yet because I wanted to show you guys the eye manipulation. But while we don't want to leave this one all scary, creepy without her face, we're going to revisit and put back. This one I'm going to, I think, just permanently put back. Maybe I'll just adjust the eyes a little bit, bring those out a little bit, line up everything, make sure she doesn't have googly eyes. There we go. Okay, just make sure everything's kind of straightforward. And I am going just to snap that faceplate back into place. And I think actually I like this much better. We can even kind of recreate. There we go. Recreate the artwork that was featured on the front of her packaging. You almost can kind of get it that exactly. And then while we're at it, we can just move this one over because we've already kind of done an extensive review of that one. And we go now to the more panicked. I'm just going to correct the eyes. I want to show you, by the way, the eyes, even though I kind of touched base on that in the other review. It's essentially just a bunch, it's like two caps that are sitting on top of ball joints. And that's just more than enough to allow you to manipulate the eyes. It doesn't require a mechanism on the back. You can just move those around quite easily, quite carefully. And you can get the eyes back into the place that you want. Now, say you want to have, I'm going to bring the eyes over just a little bit. Just a little bit. I want to just bring those eyes in a way that it will look like she's kind of looking sideways. And once that's in place, I can just attach the face like so. And now you got Coraline with the alternate face portrait. Again, something which I really quite like on this one instead of this one here. And so much so I might even probably find myself permanently keeping it like this, because I kind of like the Coraline with the striped shirt looking like this, with this head sculpt, with head faceplate. As for the rest of the figure, like I said, this one is using the Raincoat, and one thing that's good about the Raincoat, which really this one also did have, it had Velcro located on the back. I just didn't open it for that review, but I can most definitely open it on this review, just to show you how she's made up. She's got ball joints for her shoulders, ball joints for, of course, the head, and quite a large ball joint down below that's attaching itself to the lower torso. That's how everything kind of comes together, and comes together actually rather well. For this being a spindly type of figure, I mean, you can really get quite a bit of posability out of her. The Raincoat itself looks like it's made out of like a yellow nylon. The hood part can, in theory, go over top of her head, but her head is really quite big. You can, I guess, detach the Velcro a little bit, there we go, and bring that around so that you can actually cover over her head. A nice little feat. Speaking of feet, we've already, of course, talked about the fact that she does have plastic boots on, which allows not only full visibility of her hinges, I should say, on her toes, but also has full access to the holes on the undersides of her feet. She's wearing denim jeans, just like the same as the striped shirt version of Coraline, and basically all the articulation sits the same on both of these. We'll go ahead and look at that right now. Ball joint at the top of the head, allowing the head to rotate fully all the way around. Ball joint shoulders, nice ratcheted joint actually on the shoulders, forward and back and out. Bend at the elbow. You can rotate the forearm there as well, just by everything, the way it's attached to itself. A hinge back and forth on the hand. You can rotate the hand back and forth. Does have a waist swivel, but it's not so much the waist. It's kind of like the joint right above the waist. Legs split out. They go forward. They go back. Basically, just the way everything is constructed also allows those plastic tubings to rotate back and forth on the pegs that they're attached to. She does have the hinges on the knees. Once again, you kind of have to gauge as to where that hinge is sitting. Luckily for me, and luckily for you guys, that the hinge was sitting on the front of the knee, so I could just right away bend the knee. She does have rotation on the boots, hinge up and down on the toes, and actually her feet, though it does look like almost the way it's been painted, they can hinge the feet back and forth. It's not really quite the case. They're fully encased inside these rubber boots, but at least she does have toe articulation to help with whatever display you want to display Coraline in. I'm not really sure which one I like ultimately at the end of the day. I mean, these are both spectacular looking pieces. Just goes to show, actually, that Coraline, of all things, I love Coraline the movie, and of all things, it ends up being one of my new favorite things that NECA is putting out there. Sure, they're releasing tons of other great collectibles and stuff, but I find that there's something about Coraline that's a bit of a nice little gem that NECA Toys have acquired. And luckily now, this is the third, I think it's the third or possibly the fourth Coraline figure that they've released. Hopefully they will release more. And I'm sure, even though I've mentioned it a couple of times in this review, one of my favorite aspects of the new NECA Toys Coraline figures is the fact that they do have swappable face plates. This means that if you had picked up previously the other Coraline figure, or maybe you want to pick it up after you get this one here, if you decide later you want to change out the face plates with their own unique expressions, you can most definitely do that. And I think for final looks and final posing, I'm probably going to ultimately display yellow Raincoat Coraline with a more shocked face. I think it just kind of suits the scene a little bit better. And I'll have just a regular arm crossed pose, I think, for the orange sweater version of Coraline. That's just my preferred preference. A nice job again from NECA Toys. I really do like these figures quite a bit. You probably can see that in this review. I know I hide it well, but I do really like these figures. Again, the only real negative to these is not even the figures themselves, it's these stands. I'm just not feeling these stands. Maybe the clear stand could have stayed. Maybe the clear posts could have stayed. But most definitely one thing that should have been changed, I think, is the clamp that goes around her waist. It's just not strong enough. I feel like even pinching it against her torso, the whole thing just doesn't feel like it's strong enough to hold the figure upright. If they had switched over to like a spring mechanism, like a spring clamp, something that you pry open, it closes shut, and it's not going to go anywhere, and do that in the clear plastic, then I would be completely sold. This one at least has the luxury of having peg holes in the undersides of her feet. Although, to be fair, if you are looking to display her in a dynamic pose, I've kind of got her in a somewhat quasi-running pose. Much more easier to pull that off with the clamp, even though it's not the greatest of clamps. You can pull it off a lot better than just standing her on the pegs. Either way, these ones are available. Both the Raincoat version of Coraline and the Orange Sweater Coraline should be available now at your local comic book stores. Let me know if you picked these up for yourself, what you guys think of them, or just based on this review, and this review alone. If you are new to this channel or longtime viewers and never got around to subscribing, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Make sure you turn on your notifications. And certainly, most definitely, make sure you stay tuned, because we're going to have some future NECA reviews coming soon to this channel. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you guys next time.